Yeah,
Good to see you again.
Got my own water.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here on day 2, guys. I know some of you have been here for both the days. I hope it's been an informative couple of days for you all. My name is Jordan, as introed there by Steve. I'm very, very excited to have this chat with a real champion here today. I'll give her her proper dues and her proper tee up as well. 161 caps for England, 27 goals for England, bronze medalist at the 2015 World Cup, and of course, winner at this summer's Euros here on home. So everyone in the room, some love please for Jill Scott, MBE.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi Jill, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'll just start with, I nearly ended up in the Vodafone talk next door. And I walked in and they were like, oh, Jill, we didn't realise you were speaking today. Put us in. And I was like, okay, I'm definitely in the wrong place. So I'm glad I found the right room.
I'm glad you're here as well. Listen, I'm not going to start off by asking you how it feels to be a European champion. I'm sure we've all heard your answer to that. I'm sure you're bored of answering that question. So I'll ask a slightly different variation of that question, which is that, well, first of all, I was in Trafalgar Square the day after you won the Euros, and let's have it right. You were all still smashed. You were all absolutely off your faces, but rightly so. But a couple of months on now, have you had a chance to really deep what it is that you did? Because we're a massive football nation here. So many disappointments across the men's and women's teams for 50, 60 years. 2 months on now, have you had a really chance to kind of just sit down and realise what it is that you've done?
I'm still smashed. No, I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, I think so. But for me, it's literally been 100 miles an hour, I think, because since the Euros, obviously, they've wanted a lot of the Lionesses to do stuff, and a lot of them are back in training now. So you are stuck with me. But there's been some mad moments. Like I was walking down the street the other day. I think I just popped in Boots, and this woman who worked there just started crying to us and was like, what you did for the game? And I was like, oh, I only wanted to buy some shower gel. But it's kind of like, it's them moments where I'm like, it is incredible. And I was just chatting to somebody on the train before, and they said how they'd been watching the Euros and just kind of everything it's done for the game. But it's hard when you go kind of back into normal life. But having people come up to you in the street and share the stories, and even saying they were going through a really tough time in the summer and the football really pulled them through, I think that's what makes it all worthwhile, really. So, yes and no in answer to your question. Okay. I've also got this horrendous tattoo, which will remind us of it for the rest of my life.
I will get some Q&As from the audience towards the end, so any questions you've got, I'll get to those quite shortly. For yourself, well, this is about the future of media here today. I've been covering in my job the last 2 Women's Euros, the last 2 Women's World Cups. But from when you started playing football to what's happened and the madness around you winning the Euros this summer, what's the journey been like from you as an athlete, from the media's perspective? How have you seen it grown from when you started to now?
Yeah, it's been worlds apart, really. In 2007, I got picked for my first World Cup, so I was lucky enough to go on and play in 4 World Cups, so kind of the years defined my life, really. I can't remember what I did yesterday, but I could tell you every tournament and the year and everything. But I remember it was on BBC. We had Martin Keown, Jake Humphries. That was kind of his first gig in the TV world, and you see what he's doing now. It's incredible. And it was like this massive introduction to the game, and I thought, oh, this is good. We had 30,000 people in China, obviously all this coverage going on back home. But I think one of the big changes over the years is the tournament ended, and then we went back to our 200 crowds in the WSL. Obviously, it wasn't called the WSL back then, but it was kind of the sustainability of it. And then 2009, we had the Euros, 2012, the Home Olympics, and you could feel the media interest going like that. But then it always died down. So it was like, we're always having to use this energy, go back to your club games, try and raise it again for the next tournament, and then it would go back down. But I think after this tournament, the main thing is that the media, the brands, like, they seem to be staying on board with us. Obviously, success does help. We all know that in any walk of life. If you get success, people are more interested. But the biggest kind of compliment I can give to the media and brands is we've had loads of follow-up calls. For the first time ever, I was like, yes, we've got follow-up calls. And they were like, how can we help grassroots football? How can we move the game forward? They genuinely do want to help, whereas in the past, maybe I feel like people's just jumped on the bandwagon because there's something important coming up. So yeah, that for me has definitely been the biggest change.
You've kind of answered it just then, but I've covered the last 3 Paralympics. It's a similar thing in that space. Leading up to the Paralympics, disability sports really popular. Afterwards, it goes again until the 4-year cycle comes around again. How much do you think winning the Euros predicated the success and sustainability of women's football now? Do you think if you'd have lost that final, there wouldn't have been that need to follow up women's football and really the discussion around how do we maintain and sustain this around the girls' game?
Yeah, obviously the gold medal helps, but we did say before the tournament, obviously every tournament you go in, the 10 tournaments I was luckily enough to be involved in, every single one was sat there and said, we want to win it, we want to win it. Like, that's always your aim, but there's so many things you can't control in sport. I remember 2019, we didn't go through to the semi-finals because of Ellen White's toenail, I think, at the time. So it's them tiny little moments you can't control. So we said we want to inspire the next generation. However this tournament looks, we want people to be proud. We want to get the media, we want to get the nation behind us. And I remember Leah Williamson did an interview recently, so I won't say I've kind of pinched her from her, but I have. But she said that she felt like when we were going into that final, we'd tick that box. So it was kind of like the pressure was off. We had everyone behind us. We had 90,000 at Wembley. And it was like we could just probably, for one of the first times this tournament, use our energy just to play football. We didn't have to go out there and go, oh, there's a pressure on winning the quarters, winning the semis, because then we'll get 11, 12 million watching the next game. Then we're going to inspire the next generation. It was like, we can just play, and then look what happened when we could do that.
Indeed. And to the people in the room here, do you think there's a need to differentiate between how the women's game is marketed in comparison to the men's, or do you see them as the same game and therefore the approach to market them should be the same, or are there slight differences in how you would like to see the women's game marketed?
I think as the years have gone on, they've started to do it more kind of like similar, which has been better, because we don't want to be seen as like women's football, men's football. And I think what was difficult for the media was they had to kind of introduce the players to kind of the public over the years, because people didn't know. Obviously, you probably don't have to do that with the men's team because there's so much interest around them and everything else. So I've seen so much stuff in the media about how we started, going back to our grassroots clubs, what's the family like, what's the personal life like. But I think recently they have started to do it the same. There was some dead powerful campaigns. I remember the Hope United campaign where they spoke about what women might go through compared to men. There was some of the players were doing like night feeds with babies, and they spoke about periods and stuff like that, which it's so important to talk about, because you've got young girls that might go through them experiences and they're like, oh, what's happening and stuff like that. So I think now that we've reached this point, I think similar campaigns, I know that Hope United, they had players from the men's team and the women's team that formed one team. And it's like, yeah, why not? Obviously, I know we can't take to the field and play together, but in terms of the media and stuff like that, there's no kind of differences in that sense. It's just physicality differences. So I really like them campaigns. And I did something with Harry Redknapp last week, and he did something for Heineken. And he revealed a T-shirt where it said, I'm the 12th woman. And that's just so powerful, because Harry Redknapp is such a respected figure in the male game. Look at what he's achieved, and having him on board, I think it just does make such a difference.
Indeed. Give us some examples of over your career where you've had bad experiences with the media. It could be you personally or things that you've seen in the women's game where you've thought the media have not treated your games, your teammates with the respect that you maybe feel that it deserved.
I think sometimes when they maybe try and look at like personal life stories and stuff like that, but a story's a story, isn't it? I know for me, I'm quite open on my social media, so it's almost like, well, if you want to do a story, I've kind of already did it, so it's fine. But yeah, I had a few moments. I remember when there was a lot of talk about the England team in 2015, there was a lot going on with certain players, and I thought I was going to one event doing a Q&A, and I stepped off the stage and was just ambushed by cameras and asking us questions. And I remember at the time we were like, if we get confronted about certain issues, just to kind of reply no comment. And it was like, in that moment, I feel like no matter what we'd said, it was like the England team have been shushed and not allowed to speak, whereas if I'd spoke, I felt like whatever I was going to say was going to get criticised. But it's kind of, people say there's no press, that bad press isn't bad press, and at least you're getting yourself out there. And I think in the past, the women's game's always done that. It's like no press is bad press, but I think we're at the point now where it is bad press if it's not given our sport the respect it's needed. We've got this success, we've been through the hardship, we've been through breaking down the barriers and everything else. I think now it's about treating us the same, and that goes from the players as well. I've had plenty of conversations where they don't want our game to be on TV or in the papers and go, oh, well, it was the right idea, it was the right idea. We'll sit there as a team and go, no, it was a shit pass, say it. If you're going to say it about the men, say it about us, and we are willing to take that criticism, because that's it, isn't it? Pressure is a privilege, really. We're out there playing in front of millions of people, and we know that our performances will be criticised, but at the same time, give us the plaudits where it's deserved as well.
And conversely, where have the media and advertisers got it right over your career? Where have you seen examples of where you thought they've done that correctly?
Loads of times, really. I think going into this Euros, I really felt like we had the media behind us. I think for one of the first times we felt like the media were backing us. It was all positive. And it's crazy to think, really, you do all that running training, the technical sessions, the tactical sessions, but a lot of it is in your head and how you feel, just like any job, really. If you're feeling good, you'll perform better. And the media, I feel like this tournament, obviously it's hard to comment because it didn't happen, but I feel like even if we'd lost a game, I felt like we still had the backing. They really wanted us to do well. They were putting out great campaigns. They were coming and speaking to us, doing different stories. So yeah, it's not all bad stuff. There's been some really good stuff in the media. And that was probably a good example. I think fans, media, you really made our jobs easier this summer. They really did. There wasn't that outside pressure. There was loads of powerful images with like young girls just being dead, and young boys being dead happy at the games. Yeah. And I think that was just so powerful. And the amount of dads I've had come up to us saying, oh, my young girl was so inspired, can I get a picture? And then I realised you haven't got daughters, but no. Like, it's fine. it's fine, you can have a picture, but them are the moments, really, and that's what makes it important. So if you want to pretend you've got a daughter, I'm fine for pictures after. If I'm not in Vodafone next door.
Indeed. Many of us would have seen you, how do I put this, saying something less than polite to one of your German counterparts during the final at Wembley, and that's obviously that went viral. When you look back on that now, it's a two-part question. Do you actually kind of slightly cringe and think, I don't like the media is almost making that what they're going to know me for, or do you think actually there's an opportunity there to market yourself with that in a really savvy way?
Well, yeah, I can answer this question in a few ways. So first and foremost, I'm definitely not proud of it. I am the person, I've got nephews and nieces, and if they ever swear, I'll give them a little clip around it. I hate swearing, I hate it. And literally just outside of my house, we also have like a park. And if there's ever kids swearing, I actually put my head out the window and go, stop swearing. And one kid the other day was like, well, you can talk, Jill. And I was like, great. But I think that could have gone one or two ways for me. To be honest, when I step over that white line, I am a totally different person. I'm so passionate. I know I've got a referee to protect us, so I suddenly become a little bit hard and think I can like fight everyone. But I wanted to win so bad, and I think that moment, if we hadn't have won, I think it could have gone totally the other way for me in terms of she's meant to be a role model and everything else. Look at our language, and rightfully so, you are a role model at all times. It was just, when I think about the way that they captured that moment in slow motion in front of like 50 million people or something. But in terms of marketing, they sent my grandma a mug which says FOYFP, thank God, and she doesn't know what the abbreviation means. So I'm like, she's 88 on her oxygen, sitting there drinking her tea, and I'm like, this is not a very proud moment, Jill. So I think I need to make up an abbreviation, what it stands for. But yeah, they've sent T-shirts and everything. But I haven't really like thrown like fuel to it or anything. If you looked on my social media, I haven't put it on. Like, I'm not proud of it. But I feel like me and the girl are okay now, because Georgia Stanway went on to sign for Bayern Munich after the Euro. She was brave. She got up on her initiation and sang Sweet Caroline.
I saw that.
to literally like half of the Germany team. But they must have been on a night out recently, and the girl sent us a message. At first I was like, who's that? look different when you play football. But she was just like, Jill, I want to wish you all the best on your retirement. F off, you F. So I think that means we're okay. I think it means we're okay. But it does go to show, I suppose, a story is a story. Like, take that moment in isolation, it happened. But how it was portrayed was because of the success around it, it kind of got thrown into like a good light. She's passionate. Look at her, she wants to win. If we hadn't have won, the same thing happened, but it's surrounded by something different. Totally. Oh, she's a bad role model. Yeah. Look at her language. She's a true Mackham, probably would have come out. So yeah, it's interesting, really. It is interesting, and probably a lot of lessons to be learned of sometimes when you do see a story in the paper or the news, like how it's like put out to us might not be the true reality of it. But from me, I was just overly passionate.
The men's game is clearly more evolved than the women's game for reasons that we know. It was banned, the women's game, for 55 years. But considering you guys have won a major tournament now, how far do you think, in terms of marketers and brands, how far away do you think the women's game is to getting equality and equity with the men's game? Is that gap slowly closing?
Yeah, it's
definitely closing quicker.
No, it's definitely getting closer. I agree with that, especially before this tournament. I felt like we did a lot of stuff with the men's team, and it's hard because, you know what, I feel like it's always the men versus the women. But the guys are so supportive. Like, we spent some time with them before the Euros, and Gareth Southgate's really got a good group of guys. Declan Rice, Kieran Trippier, Jordan Henderson, Conor Cody. Like, they'd come, they'd sit, have a coffee, can I get you anything? They came and they asked if they could come and speak to us about the pressures of playing in a home Euros. And so it was really nice of them. And without the men's game, like, that was my role models. David Beckham, Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, like, they were who I looked up to and were who got me into football, whereas now there is female role models, which is great. But yeah, going back to your question, I think I was always like, yeah, you can talk about equal pay and stuff like that. Their game's been going for longer, the crowds they get, the shirt sales, the TV, all that stuff. But one thing for me that is controllable is if I'm turning up with Declan Rice to do something for a brand or an advert or something like that, I don't think there should be any disparity because we're both turning up doing the same job, male, female. So in that sense, I think that is a controllable, but it's definitely got a lot better, definitely. Like, in the past, it wasn't. You know, you would be turning up and they would be getting X, Y, and Z and you wouldn't. But I think definitely now I do feel like the brand's working with you. They do treat you the same as soon as you turn up. It's the same rules. We're always on time, to be fair. They are always late.
They are always late. To be fair, it's true.
They are always late. We are always on time, and that's coming from me, who's always late as well. So, yeah, in answer to your question, I do think it's getting a lot better. I do. It
was a huge moment leading up to the Euros to see Leah Williamson on the Piccadilly Circus electronic boards doing an advert. I think it was Pepsi.
Yeah.
She was doing. I thought that was really, really significant that leading up to the tournament, they'd gone big, Pepsi, on really promoting the captain and really showing that there's value in promoting women's football and women footballers. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I thought that was really, really interesting. And
and we stayed at Deansgate, the Hilton in Manchester, and I remember the first day we went out for a walk in prep camp, and there was Demi Stokes was on a massive billboard and Lucy Bronze on the Hope United campaign. And then me and Leah walked up the street. I wanted a bag of crisps, I think. She's on the packet of the crisps, and then Nikita Paris is on the can of Pepsi. And it was just, we were only walking for 5 minutes, and it was just everywhere. I think I was on the radio stations, but yeah, I didn't get my face on any brands. But no, it was brilliant. Like, it was so good to see. We'd walk past just the bus stop, and Leah was on it again, and we were just taking pictures, and it was so cool to see. And that's what I mean. The media and brands really created that buzz that then give us that kind of extra life and extra energy when we went out onto the pitch.
My final one before I open up to the floor here. Yeah. What would your advice and what would your plea be to brands, agencies, advertisers, the media for the next 5 years now to ensure that not only they do their bit to sustain the success that you guys have created this summer, but build upon that? And what can they now do to better the industry and the women's game?
I think the biggest one for me is probably genuine connections, I think. So you can connect anything, can't you? Like, a bathroom store could be like, oh, well, the Lionesses use a toilet. Let's get a campaign going of something. But I think that genuine connection.
Someone who's writing that down.
Yeah,
exactly. Someone's
writing it down. I'll take 50%. But I think I did something for Starlin, and their owner is a female who had to break down a lot of barriers in a male-dominated industry. And I think that was a great connection, obviously going into women's football, which was doing the same thing. So I think it's finding a genuine connection, and don't just jump on board because you want the billboards and you want the brand all over things because it's going to be a home Euros or it's going to be a home Olympics back in 2012. Stay on board, and how can you make it better, and how can you get them stories across that have a genuine connection? So yeah, for me, that would be the kind of the biggest word really. Don't just use us as a kind of a tool where you can get your brand out there, you can get your media out there. How can you sustain it? How can you make it better for the younger players coming through? The bottom of the pyramid, we only have the strength at the top because of the strength of the bottom of the pyramid. So keep investing, keep helping. And if people don't want to get involved, that's fine as well. I think we'd rather have genuine people, genuine brands getting involved for the long run, really, not just the short run.
I hear that. Any questions from the audience? Yes, we've got a gentleman. Wow, that was quick. There's a mic coming your way.
All right. Sorry, I know I was quick there. I'm going to pick up on your very last statement about the bottom of the pyramid, because I think, for me, I think the Lionesses and you guys working with the brands can actually have a really true effect, which I don't think the men really have on the grassroots side. I've coached grassroots like probably a lot of people in here for the last 20 years, and you constantly turn your hair out at the FA's lack of funding. But you're in a brilliant position right now to be able to change that, because rightly so, the women's game is progressing, and so are the young ladies that are progressing. I only look at my club and the amount of teams that we've got for girls, but the amount of pitches stay the same, the amount of investment stays the same. But you can work with the brands right now and actually change that, and actually say to the brands, no, we're going to do this. That's what I would personally like to see. Yeah. And that is a stronger legacy than actually winning the Euros.
Yeah, and them are conversations that are ongoing. I've had some really good conversations with Starlin Bank about, because that is the thing, with the more interest and stuff like that, you have to be able to facilitate them. You have to be able to have a safe space for these young girls, young boys to play football, first and foremost. And I know I've had some conversations just about, I think we're each getting a pitch, like the Lionesses are each getting a football pitch, and it's like, right, I do soccer camps, how can I run that soccer camp for free by using this pitch that you've provided, and just giving girls opportunity to play. Some might try it and they might not like it, but I think opportunity is that word. Everybody needs to have equal opportunity. So I do hear what you're saying, and there is conversations I can guarantee you going on, because we do understand that that is the part that needs to be better and needs to be stronger. There's no point saying, come on girls, come and play, right? There's nowhere for you to play. Like, we need to make sure that we can facilitate it. So yeah, it's a great point as well. And just touching on when you said about the brands and players working with the brands, I do want to ensure people that when we're having coffees and stuff like that, the girls will sit down and they won't just do a campaign because they're going to get offered X, Y, or Z amount of money. It's like, if, for example, it's a coaching one, I would put myself forward and say, look, I've coached for many years. I feel like I can give the brand a good experience. If it was, say, you want someone to speak correctly, probably put Leah Williamson there, who's gonna do a good job. And so I do want to ensure you that people, we are trying to find the right person for that as well, because we're not just about taking money. We never have been. It's never been about money. I didn't become a full-time professional till I was 26. Obviously, these opportunities are great now, so we want to make sure that we can make that the best experience for everyone. So I hope that gives you a little bit clarity that we are working hard behind the scenes as well, with the FA as well.
Thank you. We've got a question on the left and a question on the right.
Thanks. Similar to the last point, and I'm not going to apologise for my bias at all, I'm a massive Arsenal fan.
Good man.
And we're top of both leagues, men's and women's senior team at the moment. And, you know, I've been an Arsenal fan since I was able to kick a ball, but I've realised that I've had much more of a focus on the men's game. I used to know about, you know, Rachel Yankee, Kelly Smith coming up, and the women's team has actually been way better over the last 15 years in terms of winning stuff. But I only went to my first women's game this season, North London derby, highest attendance in WSL history. And I also was at the Wembley Lionesses versus USA game. Yeah. do you think the clubs should be doing more with the likes of the people in this room? I have a bias with Arsenal, obviously, to connect those people who are obviously fans of their men's teams with the women's teams. I think Jordan touched on marketing across both and how, it's not about you do that. But I always feel like the club can do a bit more with marketers to ensure that, we should be getting people to the stadiums, both stadiums. We should be more aware of the games that are going on in the WSL as well as the Prem.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was one of our messages post-tournament. Straight away, we were like, if you've enjoyed watching the Lionesses this summer, go to your local games, support it. And obviously, there was 50,000 at that WSL game, which was brilliant. But we also don't want that to be like one-offs. So I was at Manchester City for 7-8 years, and I think I played at the Etihad twice. And that game, the Derby game, it was absolutely fantastic. I think we had 35,000 there, and it really sticks in my mind. But why can't we play at the stadiums more? And people automatically go the men's stadiums. Well, it's not the men's stadiums, it's the main stadium. And like, why can't the female teams get in as well? So obviously we know it's not going to be a case of suddenly we've won the Euros now every single week, go and watch Manchester City women at the Etihad. We know that. Like anything in business, if you suddenly go from here to here, you do leave this room where you can just drop all the way back down. So I think what's good about the women's game is we have to just keep building steadily, because otherwise you're going to get the likes of Arsenal, Chelsea, Man City, Man United, who are kind of going away from the rest of them because they're not getting the support that's needed. So I do think it's about just building them blocks steadily. That really makes us smile that you went to the North London Derby, followed your local team, then went on to Wembley and hopefully
we won 4-0, by the way.
Yeah. Hopefully had a great experience. But that's what we need to do. We need to, if people are complaining, you need to go out there and do something about it. So I do think we're going in the right direction. I remember speaking to someone at Arsenal and they said they had a couple of games penciled in at the Emirates, and I think now that's increased by 50%, 60%, even more than that, I think. So yeah, it's pleasing, but you are right, we need to. There's been some great campaigns over the years. So I remember signing for Man City 2013, and from day one, I remember I was doing interviews and I was going, it's amazing, we get our kit washed, I wake up and I've got breakfast, and they pulled us to one side and said, Jill, you have to stop doing these interviews because it's got to be equal, like we want to treat you equal. And the whole motto was one team together. And they really did, to be honest, start to bridge that gap. And I'm not just saying it because I was at Manchester City, but I do think we kind of led the way in that. So as soon as one team does it, obviously you need the financial support and everything else, but it sets the standard then, and then everyone's competitive in sport anyway. They want to get one over, but that's fine because then we'll keep building. So I think as long as we keep doing that, but steadily, because sometimes it's good to say, what's next? In business, in anything, in life, you get a car, a couple of years later, you're pleased with your car, but you want a better one. But sometimes it's nice just to pause and say, look, would we have been happy where we are now 10 years ago, considering where we were? And the answer will probably be yes. So I think it's just about building it steadily. Sorry, I'm just going off on one.
No, I love it. Just before we get to our final question in the audience there, can I just ask you, because I should be held accountable as well, I'm part of the media, what can we do to ensure that we do our bit to ensure that the game is growing? I mean, talkSPORT, where I work, they've covered lots of games post the Euro final. BBC, they had the women's America versus England game last weekend. Yeah. What do we need to be doing for the next 5 years in the future in media to show that we're doing our bit?
I think it's just everybody taking kind of accountability, really. So I remember speaking to people because we had the 1972 legends came to Wembley, and I was chatting to people, and they had some massive crowds for the games going back all them years. And I remember speaking to them, and they were saying that the games got advertised, like we knew about it ages before, like say a month before. And then when I thought about it, obviously it's no good now because I've finished, but I was like, on a Friday I'd put on, get yourself down to our game on a Sunday. But no, my sister who's got kids, your weekends are probably planned for the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. If I asked you what you had at the end of November, you might say, little Tommy's got a game on Sunday. Isabel's got a game on Saturday, like people know. So I think we need to put the games out there earlier so that people can then put it in as a plan, and then families can work around it, because families have a lot of commitments. And yeah, it was great when we got the games on Sky. We did a lot of work around it and it was brilliant. But then the games were like 11 o'clock kick-off on a Saturday morning when all the grassroots football games are going on. I'm eating a bowl of pasta at 7 o'clock thinking, God, I'm going to be sick. I'm like, yeah, this was great that Sky took the games on, but not right in this moment. And then Sunday at 6:30 at night, and I'm like, people want to get the kids home for bed because they've got school the next day. So that's what I mean about, yeah, it's good we've got Sky. Right, now what's next? Let's change the kick-off times. Can we get it out in the media a little bit earlier? Do little deals and stuff like that. Come to 3 games in December, say it now, you'll get this special price or whatever. So it's not trying to dilute the actual brand. Like, we don't want to give away free tickets because then I feel like it's diluting it then. But yeah, maybe just talking about it a little bit more. And then, as I say, for players as well, not putting it on your social media on a Friday when you've got a game on a Saturday or a Sunday.
No. And do you have time for 2 more quick ones? There's 2 gentlemen I saw on this side. Sorry.
Hi.
Hello.
So just FYI, as a Wolves fan, I can tell you that the season tickets apply for both the men's and women's game. So if you buy a season ticket, you get access to both things, which I think is excellent.
Yeah.
And related to the question, or to what you were just saying, at what point do you think we're going to get a women's coach stroke manager in the Premier League? We have a vacancy, by the way.
People keep asking me this all the time. Well, obviously, I'm not in charge of that, but you know what I think? I know we always talk about male and female and women working in male-dominated areas and stuff like that, but for me, it's just the best person for the job, and I think there's female coaches, managers out there who are more than capable of doing it. But in order to break down a barrier, it has to be visible and it has to be seen. So if people are saying to me, what's next for you, Jill? I might say, I'd like to go into coaching. Yeah, women's teams, I'd love to coach them and all that. But it's because I haven't seen a woman coaching a man's team. So it's like, until that's visible, then it can become a dream for all the other generations. So I hope it does happen, I really do, and obviously I can't put a time frame on it. Do I think there's people capable of doing it? 100%. And I think it's so important that it does happen, because then even if, I always say, sport is such a great thing. Even if you're a female and you go to play football and you're not very good, you can still have a career in it. You can go and be a physio, sports scientist. There's so many different jobs you can do, and I hope one day that happens, just so that young girls, I'm not young anymore, but people my age can dream of having a job like that because it's visible and I can see it. So I think we do have to keep pushing ourselves to break down the barriers, be seen, if not for your generation, but certainly for the next.
Any more questions? Oh, it's one, oh, two.
Two.
Two quick ones, please.
First of all, I'd like to say congratulations. I was at Wembley when you won, and it was a great
thank you.
day out with my family. And on that note, we talk about the cost of living crisis. For me to take a family of 4 to that match was about, I think it was about £80. The year before, I'm a massive football fan. I paid £1,500 for an Arsenal season ticket as well. And
Wow.
I've been to a number of matches. The year before, I went to the men's match, and I think it was 150 quid just for the one ticket. So men's football is becoming really cost prohibitive to take a family. Do you think women's football prices will go up, men's will go down, or do you think that discrepancy between the two will stay the same, or will it change as the game gets more popular?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. I think like we have to get away from all the free stuff, and because I think then you do dilute the product really. If everything's free, it's like you're not kind of putting a cost on what it's worth to watch. So I don't know what will happen with cost prices. I do agree with you, if you have a family of 4, especially with the way the world is at the minute, you don't want to be spending so much money. My nephews and niece, the one football kits, and I'm like, I used to be able to get a Liverpool top for about 20-30 quid when I was little, and I looked the other day, they were about £100. So it is a lot of money, and I think we can be better in that sense. I do like the family feel at the women's games. I know in the final, obviously 90,000 there, which I've said about 50 million times, but I'm so proud of it. And it's like, there was not one incident, and that makes us so happy, because I'm going to contradict myself totally now, but I can never understand when people in the crowd get so mad and want to punch someone in the face because their team's losing. I'm like, is everything all right at home? If you're seriously going to a game and it's making you want to do that, I don't get it. So I hope we can still make it accessible in terms of price and affordability, because I think that family feel is what kind of keeps it unique. And also, we're in a good position. Hopefully this becomes harder as the years go on, but we do stay behind. We can sign autographs, we can take photos, and I feel like we can give young kids, boys and girls, like this full experience. So yeah, I don't know the answer to your question, but I hope it doesn't go too expensive, because I've got to pay for tickets now as well.
There's one more quick one before we wrap, please.
Were there times where you just thought, why am I doing this? You know, when you spoke about the lack of respect for the game when you were growing up, were there times with the younger Jill Scott where you just thought, what's the point?
I think, you know what, in answer, when you're asking us that question straight away, no, but it was difficult when I was when I was 9, 10, if there's people roughly around my age, you didn't have like 3 cars to a household. My mum didn't even know where I was going on a weekend. I just used to walk to the top of the street, get picked up, go to football. And I used to get parents saying, break that girl's legs and stuff like that. And I'd be in tears, like literally in tears, because I was the only girl playing with boys. And if you were beating their son, they didn't like it. But the one thing is, I used to come home. Home was my safe space. I didn't get asked about football, which was also quite refreshing. I could just go do my thing, come back. And I always wanted to go back to football on a Tuesday and a Thursday. And I think it was just in us to play. And I almost think maybe it was third child syndrome, but I'd go to my mum like, I want to be a footballer when I'm older. And she's probably thinking, well, it doesn't even exist. But I think she was like, just do what you want. The other 2 were doing all right, so you just do what you want. So she had a conversation with us recently, my mum actually, and she said I kind of feel bad that I should have done more stuff with you, you know, like days out, trips out. And I said, Mum, you supported me so much by just letting us be me, letting us dream of this job that didn't exist, not putting too much pressure on us. And yeah, so I think probably wasn't any time when I wanted to give up. I just loved playing football. And I think that's kind of the beauty of kind of my journey and my story is it's just down to a love of football and a lot of hard work. And I think just to end on kind of, I was always just average. I was never the best player, never, but I knew I was going to outwork everybody, whether it be running the shuttles in the garden on my own. I knew I was going to put in 100% hard work. So I feel like my story hopefully can show young people, older people, that you might not be the best in the room, but if you're willing to work the hardest, then anything is possible. So, yeah.
Well done. Thank you. Great questions there from the audience. You and the ladies gave the nation a fantastic end to what was a really hot summer, a great summer for us. So well done to you all. We're very, very proud of you. Thank you for your time. And I'm sure you'll be cheering on the men as they head to Qatar. I think it's 5 weeks now since the Men's World Cup. Yeah. And they can hopefully replicate your success as well. Everyone, Jill Scott.
Thank you. Thanks very much.